I'm talking here with Dada Dharmavedananda ji. Namaskar, Dada.
Namaskar.
So will you tell us how you first got involved with Ananda Marga?
I was following many different paths, one after another. Each of them was better than the previous one. And at that very moment, I was looking for a place, a spiritual commune in North America where I could do my practices intensely, and encountered an acharya in Portland, Oregon. That was 1971, month of May. I think that Dada Jatishvarananda had just arrived only a month before. I didn't understand a single sentence that he spoke during the lecture because his Indian accent was so thick and was so new to me. But I spoke with him alone without any intention to learn meditation. My only intention was to get his opinion on my going alone in a commune and concentrating on the practice I was doing. And he said, yes, it's good. I had waited 2 days to see him, and I said, well, can you say something more than just that it's good? And he said, are you sure you want me to tell you what I really I said, yes, that's what I've been here waiting for. Then he went through an elaborate talk, and at the end of that, I said, wait a moment, are you telling me that in order to really evolve on this path, I have to do a lot of social work, and what that really means is that I have to leave the practice that I'm doing and join Ananda Marga? And he said, yes. And I was shocked. And I said, I have to think about it. And I went out and concentrated and prayed, and I couldn't get an answer. And then he really grabbed my ego, that Dada. I came outside. He was sitting outside with a bunch of young people, and he said, you know, you young people are the leaders of the future. Who knows if the future president is not this young man right here? And he pointed at me. So I thought, well, maybe he's got something. But actually, I finally decided to learn meditation from Ananda Marga because I wanted to. I felt the need to combine social work with spiritual practice, and that was the cause. That was the one and only cause. I didn't expect the spiritual practice to be better, and then I found out after joining Ananda Marga, yes, it was much better. That's my answer. So I had made immense efforts to meet Baba. He was in the jail, and I was only one of 5 individuals who was banned from the jail, and I had so many different experiences. I don't want to go into them in detail right now. One of them I'll elaborate later. But it had taken for years. I was an acharya. I was the first individual to become an acharya without having met Baba physically, and he had to give a special permission for me to become so. So 7 years I was in Ananda Marga, and I was acharya 6 of those years. And I finally had the chance to see him, and when he walked up and he walked past me, in that moment my thinking was, now, any moment, if any moment now, from this moment on I die, I don't mind. The most important thing of my life I have fulfilled. I've seen him. You've asked me to speak about some tremendous life-changing lesson that I experienced, and one of the first ones I had was in the training center, where I suffered physically and even mentally much more than I had ever experienced in my whole life until that point. I had extreme dysentery, having to rush to the toilet perhaps 30, 40 times a day. The food was only chapatis, Indian breads, and white rice, and dal, mung beans, and no vegetables, no fruits, no milk, and what disturbed me the most was no sweets. And I was tortured mentally, very mental. I was in agony. But I was determined to complete the training. And that morning, when the trainer walked by me, he said, "Are you too sick to go to the class today?" I said, "Yes," and laid there on my belly. And it wasn't true. I could have gone to the class, but I was really depressed. Probably more depressed than I'd ever been in my life. And then he went into the classroom, and I was feeling guilty, so I pulled myself closer to the door and listened, and he said to the trainees, and they were perhaps 30 in number, said, "Which of you," no, he said, "You there, you stand up. What shloka did you learn, Sanskrit shloka did you learn since yesterday?" And that brother said, "I'm sorry, Dadaji, I didn't learn any." "Ah, nonsense, sit down." "What about you, stand up, what did you learn?" "Dadaji, I didn't learn." "What? Sit down." He called the third, same answer. Then he said, "Any of you who learned any shloka since yesterday, I want you to stand up now." Now I couldn't see anything, so I was listening intently, very intently. It was quiet. The quiet was only broken by a huge sound which made my body jump off the floor, and it was the trainer's fist coming down on the table, because not a single one of them had stood up. And he said, and he was shouting, said, "You boys, you're treating this place just like a hotel," which of course was absurd. We were all suffering there. But still, you're treating this place just like a hotel, just wasting your time. Your father is in the jail, suffering tremendously for the sake of humanity, and you are indulging yourselves. I don't want to see your faces unless and until you change. And he stamped out of the room. And I felt like the lowest. I felt so crude and horrible and so selfish was the word. After he passed out of the room, I got myself to stand up. I went down to the well. For the last month and a half, I hadn't taken a bath. I had not raised a bucket of water from the well because I thought I was too weak. Others would do for me. Now I raised the bucket alone. I took a bath, and I took a strong determination. I'll never be unhappy. I'll never be depressed for the rest of my life, because it is the most selfish, egoistic thing that a person can do. And that really affected me until this very moment. Any kind of sadness that comes into life, if one takes a strong determination, it doesn't need to remain for more than a few seconds. So that was the effect of the training on me. I had tremendous opportunities to be around Baba, especially if you compare with other overseas workers. And that means that I also had many opportunities to experience his harshness. Of course, I experienced his love more than the harshness, and that's why we were so attracted to him. But whenever he was in a punishing mood, others would step backward. I would step forward, because I knew that if I got punished at such a moment, whether I had done something wrong or not, that it would benefit me tremendously. It would burn a lot of sanskara. In any ways, it was a chance to get near to Baba. And I took every chance I could possibly get to be near to Baba. As you were asking me about the greatest anger that I experienced from Baba, so I'll tell you that day, Baba had not come for reporting many days, and the reporting room was full of Margii's brothers and sisters, Didis, and suddenly Baba came into the reporting room and he was shouting, and I was outside, and for a reason I won't take the time to explain, so I was late coming into the room, and everyone else was trying to get out, except the Dadas who were supposed to be in reporting, of which I was one. All the Margiis were struggling to get out one single door. The Didis who were not to be in that reporting, they were all trying to get out the door. And I was trying to get into a single door. I couldn't possibly get in. There was at least 100 persons who were pushing their way out the door as fast as they could. And Baba's inside shouting at them, so they were all afraid also. And finally, the last one came out, and here was my chance to get in, and somebody on the other side was pushing the door strongly to close it. And I used all my force to push against it, and then suddenly the person opened the door, and I flew into the room. And all of Baba's anger, it came upon me, because I was the last to enter the room, and he said, and you're the latest. You don't know the value of my time? You've come from another side of the world to attend this program? How can you show your face? But my attitude around Baba was, whenever he was present, I would never look anywhere else. I would only look at Baba, straight in his eyes. And this was no exception. I was looking straight at him, which was not the behavior of a person who should be feeling bad. I should be looking down. I should be embarrassed. But I wasn't. I was, as a matter of fact, I felt extreme Shakti, extreme forceful energy coming from Baba, and I felt so inspired and so happy with that. And I was, I couldn't smile because Baba was being very angry with me. But I felt extreme joy and even blissfulness. And then, for whatever reason, Baba was getting more and more angry by the second. His shouting was so loud, I'd never heard him shout that loud. And I think that they could have heard his voice at least 100 meters or 200 meters away. And then he shouted at me. He shouted, "Get out of here!" But I didn't go out. I just kept looking at him and bathing in the bliss that was coming from him. And then he feigned, because of course these are all just dramas. He feigned frustration with the whole situation, and huffed it, and said "Huh!" and stood up and left the room. And everyone was so frustrated because they'd been waiting for days for Baba to give reporting, and now he left. I had to put my face down that none of the other workers would see how I was feeling, but I was in a state of extreme bliss. And then 2 or 3 of them, because the shouting had been so loud, they were in a state of essentially, they were extremely agitated, almost shocked. And when they saw me, they said, "What? You're still here? I thought you got out," because Baba told her to get out. But anyway, that was a beautiful, extremely beautiful experience. Whenever Baba used to be punishing me, I would always stare straight at him and think over and over and over again, Baba, I love you. And when Margies would see me when I would go back to the field after these experiences, they always said, Dada, you look so much brighter. Because being with Baba, whether he was angry, whether he was sweet, it didn't make any difference. This changed every cell of our bodies. Another experience I had, which was very impactful on me, it was the only time that Baba gave DMS physically outside. It was not DMC. He declared it to be a DMS. It was something very extraordinary in Timran, and I accompanied him back to his room. And afterward, I was lying on the floor in Dharmavedananda's room, who is Baba's personal assistant, just opposite to Baba's room. And we had got these beautiful prasad sweet balls. Everyone was eating those, but I was in the room just with Ramananji and 2 or 3 other Dadas. And there was a big bowl of these prasad sweets, and I had already had 2. And I was looking at the bowl and thinking, should I have a 3rd? And in that moment, just in that moment, Baba opened the door, walked in. He was in his t-shirt and green lungi, relaxing dress, and he went straight to me, held up his finger, and in light of the fact that his discourse that evening had been about the 7 secrets of success that Shiva had taught. So he said just these words, and remember, the 6th point is a very difficult point to follow. Smiled, turned and walked out of the room. And I just laughed so loudly because, of course, the 6th point is control over food. So that affected me. You can understand. Beautiful experience that I had of Baba, which has also affected my sadhana forever since then. As I earlier said, whenever I was around Baba, I used to keep my eyes on him and not look at anything else. Even when I would do Guru Puja, I wouldn't bring my face on the floor. I would just look at him even when I was prostrated. So that time, we were at his house in Calcutta, and I was at the crack in the door where Baba would pass by every time to go up to his room. And usually I was at that crack alone, but that time there were many, and I was pushed. The only place I could look through the crack was closer to the floor. So usually I would stand at that crack and look at him. But this time, so I was sitting there, and he came to the crack in the door. He was standing there for some time and talking. And then when he passed out of my field of vision, I had never done this before, I happened to close my eyes immediately. And when I did that, instantly, the force within myself, someone will say Kundalini, I don't know if it is or isn't, it rose up my spine to the top of my head and was bouncing, seemingly hitting the top chakra. And it went on like that as long as I kept my eyes closed until I opened them. I found that very interesting. After that, I thought I'd try it again. The next time that I would see Baba, when he would pass out of my field of vision, I closed my eyes. And the same thing happened. Whenever I had the chance to do that, for the rest of the times that I saw Baba, I don't remember what year that was, I would have the same experience. And when I say that this affects my sadhana, I mean that even when I'm visualizing him in my meditation or in my kirtan, it brings my mind up to that chakra. Because the sight of him in the mind and the sight of him physically is the same. I think that this next experience will be very helpful to many people who never had a chance to see Baba. I was in Russia giving a training, LFT training, and there were 50 brothers and sisters there. 3 older women, they said together, Dada, and we were two Dadas. Dadas, we have a question to ask you. You two Dadas have so much devotion for Baba, but we will never be able to meet Baba because this is 1995. We will never be able to get that kind of devotion. What can we do? And immediately, a long unanswered question was answered in my mind. And I remembered back to the time when, after which I had made so many efforts to meet Baba in the jail, including seeing the vice governor and being arrested for some time because of my efforts, and I did very long fasting at one point to try to force this issue, dry fasting, made many efforts. Then out of frustration, finally I came to the superintendent's office, or the warden's office rather. He'd already met me quite a few times. And I said, I don't have the permission to see Baba, you know that. But this time, you must give me permission. And I tried in so many ways to convince him, and he was giving different excuses. And then somebody walked in the room, and he said, give me just a moment. Because I was telling him that if you don't give me the permission to see Baba, I'm going to force my way in. I knew exactly where it was, and he was feeling threatened. And he kept giving excuses, and the doctor was there, he introduced, he had the doctor tell me some stories of his experiences with Baba. They're trying to persuade me to leave. But at the same time, they were very afraid I'm going to use physical force. And then someone walked in, he said, please wait a moment. I closed my eyes without any intention actually to meditate. But somehow, immediately, and I mean straight away within a second or two, I saw myself sitting on Baba's lap. He was in the cell, just meters away from me, just behind the door. But I'm sitting on his lap in the cell. And he was rubbing his hand over my head again and again in a very loving way. And I was feeling extremely blissful and so happy to be touched by him and my face and the top of my head. And Baba was smiling. And then he said to me, at that time I was, of course, Brahmachari, not Avatut. My name was Dharmapal. And he said to me, Dharmapal, there's a very good reason that I'm not allowing you to see me. I completely surrendered, accepted it, and I felt so blissful. This went on for I don't know how long. And then from very far away, I heard a voice. He's in samadhi. I thought, who is that? And it took time for me to remember I'm sitting in the warden's office, and that's his voice, and he thinks I'm in samadhi. And then I started to open my eyes with the intention to say, no, I'm not in samadhi. But I found my eyes were brimming with tears. And when I tried to speak, I'm not in samadhi, just some mumbling came out of my mouth. And he said to me, it's all right, you wait until you're in normal mood. Anyway, after some time, after a minute or whatever, I stood up. Immediately, the warden and the doctor, they became very apprehensive. Now I'm going to again force my way, insist to force my way into see Baba. But instead of that, I just did namaskar to them. I said, thank you very much, and left the room. Dada Karunananda and Dada Ramananda were standing outside. They knew. I told them that if I couldn't get in to see Baba, I would force my way in. They're standing outside. When they saw me come out and they saw the light on my face, they said, you've seen Baba. And I didn't know whether to say yes or no. But finally this question had been answered. I was wondering, all those years I wondered, what was the very good reason that he didn't allow me to see him? For 6 years I couldn't meet him until he came out of jail. And the reason was to answer the question of those 3 older women in Russia. How can one develop devotion for Baba without physically seeing him? And here was the answer. One can have plenty of devotion. I had never met him physically, but I think I had some degree of devotion. And it has zero importance to meet him physically in order to develop devotion. Rather, and here I'll speak of something else, because the question was asked of Baba a number of times. I also heard his answer once or twice. How can I develop devotion? I didn't ask this question, but I heard other ask it. And his answer, at least that I remember, his answer was, when you have 30 minutes time for sadhana, if you want to develop devotion, do 20 minutes kirtan and 10 minutes of meditation. I have always felt that kirtan is more important for developing devotion, for visualizing Baba, for feeling his grace, than anything else. What to speak of more important than meditation, more important than anything. Of course, it must always be followed by meditation if it is to have real value. If we sing kirtan when we're driving in the car, it's good, but at the end, if we can close our eyes and do meditation, but not while we're driving, then we'll get the value. We can receive the full value of the kirtan. I have the more years, as the years go on, I face more and more challenges in my work. I won't describe them, but I'll just say that without kirtan, and I've been doing kirtan at least twice a day, every day, with rare exception, and usually 3 or 4 times a day, I feel I would never have survived. I feel that by now I would be dead in every sense of the word. So I'm extremely dependent on kirtan. And one way to recognize how valuable kirtan is, I'm not sure if this is understandable, but I'll say it anyways. Many times when we are collectively dancing kirtan, the voices of many of the Margiis in the room, they're soft. Some persons will be loud, and many persons will be soft. until about maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I had a very loud voice, extremely loud. It was so loud that when I would be singing kirtan with 30, 40, 50 people, you could hear my voice above everyone else's. But whenever I would dance kirtan in front of Baba, and there too, of course, I used to sing very loud voice, I myself couldn't even hear my voice. Everyone was singing so loud. And Baba says, it doesn't mean that we should be shouting, of course, but Baba says that kirtan should be done in a loud voice. Whether he means really loud or whether he means aloud, I don't know. But I know this, that when people feel devotion for Baba and they're singing kirtan, the kirtan is strong, is beautiful. For whatever reason, all the years that I was Margii and Acharya without meeting Baba, and then for several years, even having met him and seeing him so many times, I kept trying to find a mistake that Baba was making. And quite a number of times I thought that I found a mistake that he was making, but then it turned out no, it was correct what he said. And this just went on. And I know that so many Margis and Acharyas also have doubts about Baba, have doubts about Ananda Marga. I also did, but I never questioned whether I should be in Ananda Marga. Anyway, somehow I had these doubts. I was trying to find some mistake that he was making. And then that day, Dharmavedananda who's normally very courageous, was quite nervous in the reporting. And he was reading it in a mixed up and jumbled way. And Baba turned to him. We were not many in the reporting session. Baba turned to him and said to him, "Adi, read your report correctly. You are wiser enough." Now I was standing just in front of Baba, and immediately I thought, oh, Baba made a grammatical mistake. He should not have said, "You are wiser enough." He should have said, "You are wise enough." At that moment, he had his finger in Dharmavedananda's face, having just said to him, "You are wiser enough." He swung his finger immediately into my face and said, "Wiser, not wise. Wiser than you." And he pointed his finger in my face. And I thought, okay, and I laughed. I thought, that's the end of all of my questions and doubts about Baba. There were 2 times that Baba was in Europe, Berlin sector. One was for a month and the other was for 10 days. And in one sense, I had the same experience both of those times, and that was I was extremely busy with him because I was in charge of his security, his field walks, the kitchen, arranging the personal contacts, so many things. So I was continually busy with Baba, with the arrangements for Baba, and I was all the time that he was out of his room, and much of the time that he was even in the room, I was near him. And it left me very little time for sadhana, and very little time even to eat. But I didn't care at all. For me, what was the purpose of doing sadhana? When Taraka Brahma was right there, the Mahasambhuti was right there with me. Why should I close my eyes? How could I get something higher than this? There was one day that because I was the VSS worker, And the Secretary General of the SS, Dharmavedananda, said he was angry at me because he said I was spending all of my time around Baba, and as a result I was not creating any LFTs or whole timers. And he said, from now on, when Baba goes out for field walk, you will not go, and you have to make LFTs and whole timers. And then they left. That was the only field walk I missed, because I'll tell you why. And so they went out. I didn't make any effort at all to make an LFT or a whole time or even speak with anyone. The whole time that they were out for the field walk, I was sitting alone and crying because I was missing and I really wanted to be with Baba. I couldn't, there was no question of my doing anything because I was so distraught emotionally. Now this is, by the way, that is not depression or typical unhappiness. That's kind of spiritual unhappiness. Is extremely healthy. So I was just weeping, and then Dadaji came back from the field walk, and I thought he's going to come up to me and say, so how many LFTs, whole timers? But instead of that, he came to me and said, Dharmavedananda, from now on, you will have to go on every field walk. My mouth flew open. Why? And he said, everything, the security was a complete mess in your absence. So I was very happy with that. In some way, Baba was the same all the time. But in certain ways, especially some cultural ways, Baba was very different outside of India than inside, because I saw, number one, I saw that he was very relaxed and not real. In workers' meetings, he would get angry with us, but outside of the workers' meetings, he was very sweet and kind continually, and giving lot of attention to each and every, to so many Margies individually, to sisters also, including sisters, which was less common inside of India. There was the time that and sisters kept asking to us, to the workers. They wanted to go on field walk, and of course these kind of things had never been done. And then in one small meeting, it wasn't a meeting, I was with Baba, and we were a few workers with him, and the Bhukti Pradhan Bodhishwar, and I don't remember what maybe it was after his food or something. And then he said to Bodhishwar, some words like, you look distracted about, you're disturbed about something. Baba knew what he's asking when he put this point. He said, what is it? And Bodhishwar said, my wife is very unhappy. Baba said, why is that? Because I'm spending so much time with you. I'm always around you. I mean, he's talking of himself, Bodhishwar. But she cannot come near. Women are treated differently. They cannot even go on field walk. Baba, is it not possible that sisters can go on field walk? And we were Ramananji, Dada, especially his personal assistant, and me, we were wow, we're thinking like this. I looked at Ramananji. This is a very forward thing to ask Baba. Yeah, because normally Baba would give a strong reply, but instead Baba said, why not? And Ramananji and myself, we were shocked to hear it. But it was from that moment the policy changed. And there were many things that changed like that. many things were different. I think that was the first time that Baba started giving a group contact, personal contact to sisters. Yeah, and the food. There was one day that I was with him in the airport in Frankfurt, something was unscheduled, so his full breakfast wasn't arranged properly, and I quickly went out and bought some yogurt for him, and I brought it back, and I was actually very excited to give him that yogurt. It was blueberry yogurt. And I knew that Baba had never had commercial yogurt before. It had always been yogurt prepared by his own kitchen. And it had sugar in it and whatnot. And then I gave him the yogurt, and I said, "Now, this is commercial yogurt, Baba. It's blueberry yogurt. Would you like to eat this?" He said, yes. And I was so excited and watching to see, and he took one spoon and tasted. He said, "Very good," and I felt extreme pleasure. And then he took another spoonful. He said, "So nice," and and he ate the entire yogurt. It was mostly Baba would just take a spoon of this, a spoon of that, but I don't know if he ate the entire yogurt simply because he really enjoyed it, or I'm sure that it was to make me happy. Now this is in relationship with Dharmavedananda. First of all, I saw him eat cheese many times. We used to give him cheese. And that cheese itself, there's no question that in those days, all cheese had rennet in it. And he told Dharmavedananda, who had tuberculosis, that when he would go to the West, he went to Sweden, set up the training center there, that he should eat cheese, that it would help him to overcome his tuberculosis. But when Dhruvananji went to India the first time, having been in Sweden for maybe 2 or 3 months, he went to visit Baba in the jail. And as soon as Baba saw him, he said, Baba became angry because he saw that Dhruvananji was still suffering from tuberculosis, still thin, still weak, or whether it's tuberculosis or just very weak and thin, and he said to him, "You're not eating the cheese. Why you're not eating the cheese?" And Dhruvananji said in a small voice, he said, "Baba, it gives me pain when I eat it." And then Baba became, according to Dhruvananji, he became calm and quiet. He said, "No, you go on eating it, the pain will go away." And he told me this Dhruvananji told me this as soon as he came back to Sweden. Then he started eating cheese, and it happened so. And he remained extremely fond of cheese for the rest of his life. When he became the general secretary, I used to bring him cheese every time I'd come to India. So I think the answer there is that the quantity of the tamasic material inside of it is so minuscule in comparison with the total quantity of the cheese that it doesn't really affect it.
Okay, Dadaji.